Hello, and welcome to the Fiber Circus. This is episode 25, and it is August 7th, 2019. If you're a returning viewer, thanks a lot for coming back. This is the 1-year Podiversary, so I've been podcasting now for a year, and I've kept it up, which is a good thing. Not always every other week like I'd planned, but I'm getting pretty close to it at least. If you're a new viewer, thanks a lot for joining in, and hopefully you enjoy the podcast. And in case you didn't know, I'm Elizabeth, and I'm the dyer behind Spotted Circus, which is my hand-dyeing, machine knitting, spinning, and alpaca farm type business. If you need to get a hold of me, all the info for today's show and the show notes will all be right down below in the down bar. If you just click down there, there'll be links to everything that I've been working on and most of the stuff that I talk about probably. So if you need to find me on the internet, I am Spotted Circus on Facebook and on Instagram and on Ravelry. So thanks a lot for joining in, and hopefully you enjoy the show. So the last 2 weeks I've been extremely monogamous, which I don't know where this is coming from, but I guess I'm on a mission to knit multiple sweaters this year. I had 5 sweaters that I submitted for the SSK Try It On room here a few weeks ago, and out of those 5 sweaters, in the last year, I think I've completed all of them. So, in this year so far, I've completed, let's see, my Dangerfield Island, my Love Note, I think Dangerfield Island, Love Note. I also have those 2. There's a 3rd sweater that I think I did this year. No, that was my machine knit sweater that I'm thinking about. So I've done, I think, 2 sweaters so far this year, and I'm getting pretty close now to finishing a 3rd, which is just crazy for me. So I did a lot of monogamous knitting over the last 2 weeks because I'm trying to get it done now. So this project is living in a project bag by the Fat Squirrel, and she said that it reminds her of pool party type stuff. To me, these are spore prints from mushrooms, if you've ever done a spore print before. And it's got the little SSK badge on it. And it's really getting too full. I mean, you can see it's pretty stretched out. And I'm trying to not have to switch out what bag I'm using, but the end is probably getting near for it. So last week, I was right here where this little lion was. So I just finished the blue section. Since then, I did all the way up to the pink on both the front and the back, because I just separated for sleeves. I have a collar, and I have half of a sleeve, as you can see. This is being knit on size 9s, I think. It's the bad thing about these needles. It's not like the numbers are etched in, and they tend to wear off if you actually use them over time. Yeah, US size 9. Don't know what that is in metric, sorry. It's more than a millimeter, I know that much. So yeah, so the body's completely done on this sweater. You can see it started out on the bottom, and then went through a pinky purple, and then an indigo, and then a blue, and a green, and a yellow, and an orange, and a pink. And it's very, very vivid, because these are all neon mini skeins that I used. So I'm about halfway through this sleeve, so it goes on this way. So halfway through the sleeve, I've got, the pattern said to go to something like 16 or 17 inches, which if that happens, maybe I just have short arms, but it'd be way over my hand. So I think I'm going to just do roughly another 6 inches. So I've marked it down here, so that way I know whereabouts I was. I'm doing a few decreases, but this is meant to be a pretty baggy overall sweater. It does fit, definitely fits. This is a very forgiving sweater if you aren't quite right on your gauge, because it's literally all ribbed. So it can go from being out here to ridiculously wide, for me at least. So that's all I've been knitting on this past week, really, because I did, you know, the yellow, orange, and pink sections, and most of the green on both front and back. So that's a good 3, 6, 9, 12, 24 inches, including front and back. So I think that's pretty good. And I'm knitting it on, my yarn is called Spotted Circus. This is a 75-25 Superwash Merino nylon sock yarn. And the main body color is this. which is going to be called Oilslick when I re-dye it back up. My hope is to have kits for this out at SAFF, which is in October. So this is Oilslick. It's a reverse speckled with primaries and grays and just a hint of white. And this is how it knits up, which is kind of cool, I think. I mean, there's not really any pooling, and I did not alternate skeins at all in the sweater because I thought that was way too much work. Especially since I'm holding two strands at the same time. So I'm pulling from the front and the back on this ball, so it's going to go in opposite directions for the colorway. So I didn't bother to alternate anything. So the sweater's pretty easy to work. As long as you can do a knit and a purl and you don't mind a million miles of 1x1 ribbing, you're good to go on this sweater. Meant to be oversized. The pattern is called Rainbow in the Storm. This is the plus size version. I'm knitting the 52-inch right now, and the pattern is by Paige Parkin. And I can show you what, in theory, it's supposed to look like. So there is what hers look like. So hers was a little more subtler than what mine is. I asked my husband last night when I tried it on if he'd go out in public with me with it. And he did kind of hesitate when I asked him that. Probably not a good sign. It's definitely going to be a big, comfy, oversized sweater, though, to put on for layers. And since it's superwash, I'll be able to wash it pretty easily. But all of the rainbow colors are all mini skeins that I dyed up, all in neons. They all have little flecks. And out of 130 yard minis, this is what I have left out of each of them. So it's not a ton. No idea how much on yardage exactly it is, but I'm planning on dyeing up mini skeins that look like this to go along with this kit. Easy sweater, pattern's easy to follow. I think there's also a little kids version of this sweater. So that's my Rainbow in the Storm currently. And you can see my one sleeve, and I'm on Sleeve Island, but it's going along pretty well. I'm doing some decreases every couple of rows, so I am keeping track of that at least. But nothing really mindful that you really have to think a whole lot about, which is kind of nice. So I'm hoping by next time I'll either have the sweater done or I'm going to make it a point to work on something else, because it's kind of a boring podcast when you knit on the same thing only for 2 weeks. And I have plenty of other works in progress. But as you can see, I really have to struggle to shut my bag. So it's probably a sign that I need to get a large bag. So, let's see. Cast-ons. I didn't cast on anything new so far. Finished objects. I haven't finished anything. Spinning. I haven't done anything there. Machine knitting. I did a replacement on my Pass-It machine. It's got a needle channel that both a needle and a pusher slide in. It's a metal channel. And when I was making my last pair of socks, the butt of the needle bent sideways in the channel, and as a result, instead of the channel being perfectly upright, there's like this gouge in the side. So I had to pull that off of its stand and loosen a bunch of bolts so that way I could change that out. But I did that yesterday, so I'm hoping to maybe do a pair of socks on the machine here in the next couple of days. And I also want to get back and get my button gear and take this swatch that I made a while back and actually get the dress done that I wanted to do for my niece. Because it's almost the end of summer, seeing as how it's August, and wearing a watermelon dress in October is not near as fashionable. So the pattern is going to be this. There's going to be some slip stitching to it. So I just need to sit down and measure this gauge versus the pattern's gauge. Try to remember what gauge this was, which is why I have all these little dots right here, so that way I know it was on tension. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Looks like tension 8 is what I was knitting at. And this was just a matter of me changing the pattern down here up into here a little bit. I think. I have 2 little mysterious dots over here. Does that mean I did 8.2? This is why you should use swatch tags and write down exactly what it was that you were doing that was different, so that way you remember. So, anyways, I'm going to try to work on this because I want to get that dress done so that way she can actually wear it this year a little bit. The other thing I'm going to be not necessarily casting on, but sewing is I have an alpaca named Dolly that's due with a baby in the next month, and her baby is the one that had the eye injury last year, and they're still in there together because we don't really have another pasture where we could separate out our females. And since she's getting close to having her baby, she's decided to let her old baby start nursing, which is a problem because that baby is now stealing the milk production that the future baby gets. So I'm going to try to make an alpaca bra somehow. I think what I'm going to try to do is make like a square of heavy duty fabric and then run some like nylon webbing stuff, like, you know, like the webbing that you use in like a purse or something, and run it up out around the body here, and then I'm going to have to come up from the tail and then attach them somehow so that way it doesn't slip in either direction. The problem is I really need to measure the area that I want to cover to make sure I'm not covering important bits and it's not too far forward. And I don't think she's going to like this very much. So tonight I need to either grab her or grab somebody who might be a little bit calmer about this idea and do some measuring. And then I'm going to need to get this sewn because the baby's nursing quite a bit and she can't be doing that. So that's a future project. Last week I also was watching the Fat Squirrel podcast. And if you don't watch Amy Beth of the Fat Squirrel, she's very entertaining. She does a lot of gardening and a lot of canning. And last year her canning led me to decide that I needed to pick like 10 pounds of okra and pickle some okra. I'd never done any pickling before, but I figured how hard could it be? And the pickles turned out good. They were delicious. But when I was watching her most recent podcast, she made Nectarine Ginger Jam. And I was like, huh, I like jelly of jam. I don't know if I like nectarines because I mean, it's not like they leave a lasting impression that said, oh, nectarines, I'm so excited. But our Fresh Time, which is a grocery store in the area, had nectarines on sale for 77 cents a pound. And the single batch recipe took 3 pounds of nectarines, so she doubled hers. So, hey, monkey see, monkey do. I doubled mine too. So I made 6 pounds worth of Nectarine Ginger Jam, and it's made with Pomona's something pectin. Pomona's Perfect Pectin, or it's a bunch of peas. Pomona's something pectin. And I'll leave a link to the recipe down in the show notes. And the recipe's actually for a peach ginger jam, but I use nectarines like Amy Beth did because you don't have to peel them. And I like the idea of not having to try to peel a peach a lot better. So I used nectarines and ended up with 11 jars of Nectarine Ginger Jam. And it uses crystallized ginger, which our Fresh Time also had that by the pound, and you could buy it in bulk. I think I got like half a pound of it, and I so didn't need a half pound. So now I'm thinking maybe I should make some more of this because I really like it. In the weekish, no, it's under a week that because I made this on last Saturday, and I've probably eaten at least a third to a half of a jar because it's really good. I used honey instead of sugar in the recipe, and then I didn't add as much honey or sugar. I added the bare minimum that you really needed in the recipe. Oh, excuse me. So, yep. Nectarine Ginger Jam. Doesn't look quite as orange as hers, but see, I even labeled that I made it in 2019. However, I don't think it's going to last till 2020, so if the nectarines go on sale again, I will totally make some more because it was super easy to do. You just chopped up the fruit and chopped up the ginger, and you add some calcium water to it, and then you add some pectin to the honey, and then you boil it for a little bit and stick it in the jars, and then put them in a canning pot thing for like 10 minutes, and it's sealed. See, there's no bouncing up and down of the thing. So I haven't really let my husband try much of it yet. It's in the refrigerator, but he hasn't tried it. He also hasn't tried my pickles that I made last year either, which is really kind of silly because with the amount of vinegar that you put into pickles, odds of you getting anything like horrifying is pretty rare. But he hasn't tried this yet. And I'm okay with that because I think if he does try it, he's going to sit with a spoon and eat it, which is a problem because this is not, as I tell him, things are ingredients, not meals. You know, You shouldn't just sit and eat the cheese, the shredded cheese, because it's an ingredient that goes into a meal. It is not a meal. However, it's how husbands go. So I made some jam, and then I also spent quite a bit of time trying to update parts of the shop this past week. So I'm having a sale right now. It runs through the 12th, which is, I think, this weekend. Everything in the store is 15% off except for drum carters and wheels. And probably in the next couple of months I'm going to be discontinuing carrying Spinolution wheels. There's some practices and, how do I put it? They have some things that I don't agree with morally in the background going on. Mainly having to do with racism and their position on things, and I don't necessarily want to be associated with that at times. So unless they start changing their tune pretty soon, I'm probably not going to be carrying the wheels anymore, which kind of sucks because I do love my Firefly. But at the same time, you know, I don't want to be associated with a business that isn't inclusive of all people. So the Etsy store is updated. I have everything in there except for my hand-dyed alpaca roving. And it's mainly because that's all pretty much a one-of-a-kind, a one-off thing, and it's harder to list that. Depending on my schedule, I may try to do that in the next week and add some more, but it's not a guarantee that it's going to get in there. So, but otherwise, everything in there is 15% off. Travel-wise, in the next 2 weeks, not this coming weekend, but the weekend after, I am headed to Ohio, where I'm going to be doing a small machine knitting class. From Ohio, I'm going to southern New York, where I'm going to be sorting at a farm for a few days. And then from there, I'm going to Yakapalooza the weekend after in Tully, New York. So if you're down in the southeasternish corner of New York, I'm going to be there judging the fiber show on Friday and then giving a talk on Saturday about yak fiber. There'll be yaks to see, yak meat, yak pin judging, fiber goods, and all sorts of seminars. So, if you've ever wanted to learn about yaks or see a yak in person, you should definitely consider going. There's more information on their website. So it's iyak.org, I think. It's the International Yak Organization. And if you search on there in their events column, there's information about the Yakapalooza in Tully. So that's the majority of the travel, because after that, I'll be vending at Knitting at the Estate September 21st. And then after that, SAFF, which is in October. It's the 25th through the 27th in Asheville, North Carolina. So I'll be getting prepared for that, and I'm going to be trying to do some machine knitting to start stocking up for holiday shows. I applied for 4 yesterday. I'm hoping I get into at least 1. That would be nice. So I need to start doing some machine knitting and start turning out some hats and scarves and some different items that I'm going to try to do. So that's on my radar right now. Farm news. We got our chicken coop done finally, and we moved the chickens and the guineas out there, and then we also put a front yard on it so that way they could come out of the chicken coop and walk around. Our biggest concern was our dog Yeti. He's a Maremma who's out there. In the beginning, he had eaten a few chickens when he was younger. So we were concerned that he was going to think that these were food and not friends. So we put chicken wire around the bottom and chicken wire coming out into the earth so that way he hopefully can't dig under. So far so good. Nothing's gone in there. Nothing's eaten the chicken. And we're hoping that as a result he will learn that he should be guarding these animals and not eating these animals. So far so good. Fingers crossed. We haven't lost anyone, and he hasn't shown like a horribly fascinated interest with them. Like, he's not glued to the side of the cage panting, hoping that a chicken will fly out. So I think when I counted them, I think we have 25 guineas and like 24-ish chickens, roughly. So I'll put a video in here at the end of the chickens coming out of the house for the first time, and they're pretty entertaining. The guineas can fly really well. We've added some perches in the cage, and I used some bamboo poles because that's what I had in the backyard, and there were so many guineas on the poles that they're starting to bow. So I need to come up with a better solution for that. But they're definitely entertaining to watch. We definitely have some female guineas because they're making the buckwheat call that they make. So it's going to be interesting to see how this develops. We may have quite a few eggs here in the next month and a half or two. So if you're local and you decide you want some farm fresh eggs from chickens or guineas, we may have them. Long term, we want the guineas to probably wander loose because we want them to go around and eat the ticks and the parasites that are in poo piles. However, we want them to come back at night and not run away. And we also want the dog to not eat the guineas. So it's going to be a very slow introduction, and we want to make sure that the guineas can fly up and away and not just sit there if the dog decides to play them to death. So that's all the big news for today. Hopefully next time when I podcast, I'll have a lot more excitement as far as knitting, because this was kind of a one-trick knitting show this week. So otherwise, that's about it for this week, and I'll plan on talking to you later. Bye!